Not too shabby. I think that could definitely almost stand out as a track on its own just with those two parts together. Hey, how's it going? My name's Dan, and today I'm going to show you a track breakdown of a drum and bass remix I did for an artist named Jocelyn Dell. I met Jocelyn in Chicago at a music conference there last year, and here we are working on our first thing together. He released this track as part of like a 3-part re-release of the original song, the drum and bass remix, and also a brand new acoustic version of the song as well. So here I'm going to show you a bit of an Ableton session breakdown and dive into some of the behind the scenes in there. So let's get into it. So it's always hard to tell where a remix is coming from if you don't hear the original, so I encourage you to go check that out. So that song is kind of shoegazy, it's chill, it's very atmospheric, vibey, and I kind of wanted to capture that in my remix. Now it's always like a toss-up of like how should you approach a remix? Like should you retain the whole structure of the song, or like just chop out like one chorus section and then like repeat that and make that like a super hooky, catchy, but ultimately like repetitive, maybe more for the club, that kind of thing. In this case, I wanted to retain the entire structure of the song, and I feel like we were able to do that in a pretty good way here. So let me just play a bit of the choruses, and I'll just kind of jump through real quick. So I hope that gives you a quick idea of the song. So there's so many things I want to get into, but I think the first thing I want to look at is just the way I kind of reinterpreted the parts that were already there in the song before I started adding anything else. So one main motif in the song is these keys. So in this group, like I'm on this one track here, this is that harp thing you just heard. And if I remove all of these effects here, you can see here's just like a arpeggiating loop. So what I wanted to do to make this feel a bit more remixy is just add a bit of texture, add a bit of movement. Here, I'm doing that just by obviously hyping it up, EQing it to make it how I want it for this bright remix. But getting into the real meat of it is like when I start adding these noise effects, RC20 here, just adding some grit to it, and then also Arturia's effects motions thing. I think this is an amazing plugin, and it's adding so much movement. This is like literally the default preset on this plugin here, and it's just glitching the thing out over like a repeating sequence, adding noise in here and there, and I think, yeah, adding some random pan in as well, and this is what it adds. I just instantly love that texture that adds to the song. Then I just have some other dynamics stuff in there to help even it out how I wanted it to. And then a version of, then a couple infiltrators here adding some gating, chopping type effects as well. Oftentimes when I'm approaching a remix, I like to imagine that I am doing this in like a DJ set, and I do some things in the DAW to kind of give me the feeling that I'm like out there playing on the decks. And one of those things is adding some intense filtering in certain moments of the song. Here, on this instrument, these are the main like keys of the verses of the song. And if I turn all the effects off, here's what we got. Just kind of like warbly Rhodes kind of thing. That's my effects. Got the auto pan, all that kind of stuff. But one thing that happens, going into choruses, going into the drops of the song, is I have some pretty intense filtering going on. So I love to add like high passes, low passes with like some intense resonance going on. And I think doing that really helps to like propel the instrument, whatever the element is, into like the next part of the song, like to help add a transition, help to add suspense, or maybe to take away some clarity with like a low pass filter as well. So I'm doing that all over this track, but this is just one example, and I'll show you another as we get into it. So in addition to this one harp track as it is, I also have like a glitchy version of this coming in. It's just reversed, and that comes in both of like the quiet sections, a couple of the quiet sections of the song. I'm doing a bit to add a little more ambience to the song, a couple more pads. This is a Pigments patch. Here's what that looks like. I love this preset. Then I also have this piano coming in here. This is the Arturia Piano V3. And I have the Arturia Fragments plugin coming on as well. This is the same type of effect that like Crystallizer would give you. And I think this is adding so much glitzy beauty to the track, and this is really where in terms of ambience, this is like probably the biggest thing I did to give it my own flair. I just have some crazy reverb going on with this track as well to help extend it throughout. I have a couple sections of the track where it's doing some low stuff, some fuller stuff. It's so beautiful. So there's some of the pretty stuff in the song. Now I'm going to get into some of the more gritty stuff. And here's one of the things that happens in the second chorus. This is like an alarming kind of synth that comes in here. That is a Pigment patch. The one thing I'm doing to help this feel as crazy as it does is I'm automating how much it's detuned as it goes in and out of that big note. So as the note plays, it starts to just get wider and a little dirtier, and then it comes back in, and we do that throughout. You can hear how it just like spreads a little bit and adds a little bit of tension to it, and then I bring it back in, because that's kind of the thing I'm thinking about as I'm going through this remix is like, I want it to overall sound beautiful and pretty, but with just enough grit and rhythm to, you know, make your head move, make it hit your chest a little bit when you're driving down in the car, and just like take whatever the emotion is that you get out of the song and just kind of hype it up to 10. The next synth that I have is coming in this breakdown section. Now let's play the breakdown section about midway through and see if we can identify this. You know, at this point of the song, you already know basically all the sounds in the song. So I'm trying to add a bit more texture, help keep you interested. And the way I'm doing that here is with another Pigments patch. Man, I used a lot of Arturia stuff on this song, but that is like just a pretty simple, trancey kind of ARP sound. Or synth sound that is playing the same ARP melody as the harp earlier in the track. I do have another layer doing the same thing right before that last drop, but it's not as crazy. Okay, maybe I forgot. I did get a little crazy there with that tremolo thing and all that glitchiness. Yeah, okay, maybe I take that back. So let's hear that whole group again right before we go into that third chorus. And here's all of those kind of pretty elements working together. Yeah, so a lot of stuff going on there. We also have some elements that are rising in pitch. Yeah, you know what that's coming from actually is not any one particular synth or anything, but it's actually coming from the reverb. Let me get that to trigger again. There we go. So yeah, I'm automating this reverb as a way to help add tension to that section and help like lead us in to the next part of the song. I definitely recommend doing that. Only do it with like a reverb that is very smooth when you adjust it. That's definitely this one. Also, Native Instruments ROM does the same thing very beautifully. All right, let's move on here. I'm going to take a look at these guitars real quick. So this is something that in the song that stays pretty static, just adds a lot of atmosphere. All I did was add a little bit of grit with the Native Instruments, with the Ableton Roar, and not much else happens with this track. I think they actually get muted for a second there, but they come back. So the only other thing that I'm doing with that track is adding some of that fragments, the crystallizer kind of sounding plugin, and that helps glitz it up a lot, add a lot of atmosphere to the guitars. All right, let's check out the almighty bass group. Now, there's a few different bass elements going on here at different points in the track. Why don't we play that with the drums so you can get a bit more context for it? So one thing I'm often doing between bass groups, especially in a dirtier kind of sounding track, is layering up basses and using them for different reasons. So like I might have one just for sub, one for kind of warmth and like, I don't know, chunkiness, whatever you want to call it, and then maybe something even higher that's more buzzy kind of thing. And I have that kind of setup going on here. So here's one. This is doing an offbeat thing. Pretty simple sound there, but it is pretty like, gritty sounding. And here's that. It is Pigment's Patch. I think it is one of the Mercurial Tones packs. Then we got this going on. That's what that's looking like. And then we have like a sub going on. Now this sub is getting warmed up quite a bit with some Decapitator. Here's that patch, by the way. Yeah, but we're warming it up, adding some harmonics. Here's without Decapitator. So you can clearly hear that. And then as we get into the song, I have a couple other bass things going on to help add some variability. So this is kind of like, I call this like my pretty bass or whatever. As we go through the bridge section of the song, and then as we go into the end of the song, I feel like we use this as a nice way to kind of round out the song and just help it taper off and close the track out in a nice, pretty way. So I'm going to show you the end of this track real quick, and you can hear how this bass is kind of helping us to taper it off. So you can even see this preset is even called a warm land, so it's perfect. So we have like just a root note and then, a perfect fifth, and that's what's helping us to give that warmth. Then the most gritty bass of them all in this song is this here. And let's give it a play. So this is the end of the track, biggest chorus, and this is helping us to get the nastiest sound. So let's hear that whole group. Let's solo that with the drums, actually. Why don't we do that? Not too shabby. I think that could definitely almost stand out as a track on its own just with those two parts together. All right, now why don't we go on to those drums? So here is the drum group, and here it is in the biggest section of the song. So I feel like it's a pretty fat layer of drums, and you could obviously hear there's different elements going on there. So I'm going to kind of break those down a little bit. Doing some loopage here. That's kind of doing like the top fuzzy stuff. A little more meaty layer for that there. Then here is some more texture. This is Native Instruments thing. A little topper. So I'm just trying to fill out different elements in the frequency spectrum and add a lot of like ear candy. Then we get on to a bit more. As we go into the final chorus, I have this thing going on. And then I have a few fills going on as well. And these are just all splice things moved around. So I'd say the biggest thing about this drum group in the song is just momentum, just keeping it going, adding a few things on there on top as we go along to add a bit more variation. But the drums are not the, while they are super loud in the mix, they are not the kind of motivating force in the mix. I'm listening more to the bass, and I'm listening to those vocals to help pull me along in the track. So that's kind of how I was thinking about it for this song. Now, talking about like the quieter sections of the song, I am using a filtered version of one of those breaks, and I'm also using some stuff from the original track. So let's solo those elements together. So we have this conga. This is from the original track. This is all from the original track. And then here's like my break that I have. Then here's a noise shimmer moving us into the chorus. Then here we are into the first chorus. So I think like the main thing here is we are not doing, well, the drums sound so different between, you know, quiet section, loud section of the song. We are still retaining a bit of a through line by using one of the breaks that I have happening in the chorus, but using them in a much different way. Like I am using a loop here, but I'm chopping it up, filtering it out, making it feel like it's in a whole different context. Then this break does open up in the drops of the song, and we can hear that here. And you can hear that filter like I did in some of the synths as well, helping us to, you know, transition from place to place in the song. All right, let's take a look at the vocal group. The vocals were a super important part of the song because I wanted to keep them as they were in the original song, but just do enough to add a bit more movement to them and add a bit more weight in terms of background and in terms of reverb and in terms of like glitchiness, all of that kind of stuff. So one of the things you'll hear and we'll get into is like vocoding. Vocoding is not something that I do a lot, but this was a really awesome experiment. So I think with the amount of space that was in the original version of this song, we had the room room to do a bit more in terms of like affecting the vocals and adding some glitchiness, adding the vocoder, adding the weight around the lead vocal, and also adding like a different context to the vocal in the bridge section, which we will get into soon. I'm going to play these vocals solo, and what you're going to see is there's like the normal lead vocal, but we also have like little chops going on and some little altar boy like pitched up stuff as well.
When I'm tired in a world afloat to hell, keep my head up, eyes up.
So like just from this section to that section, you can hear that like there's two different, much different vibes to the vocals between those two sections. So like here we have this really low effect going on. Obviously that track is filtered as well. Then we get into the super spacious, bright version of the vocals.
Keep my head up, eyes up to the sky, stay inspired. Now's my time.
Using a lot of this reverb here, and this is super long, super splashy. And then as we go up,
I'll make my goals, ooh, keeping my head up, eyes up to the.
So I think what's cool here is that we go from like a super splashy wet reverb to one that is less wet, a little more restrained, has some chorus on it. There's some chorus in the mix somewhere.
Keeping my head up, eyes up to the sky.
And then we have this low little altar boy thing.
Eyes up to.
And then we go into some chops as well.
All of my eyes. When I've lost all my fight, I'll see my light.
So I think a lesson from here is that I'm trying to make the vocals move a bit and give each section of the song their own kind of style of vocals to help the track move along, help it sound engaging, and help kind of create different tensions and releases between the different sections of the song. Like in that first verse we heard super filtered, super spacious, then we get to the drop, and then it's like it gets flipped on its head and it's like suddenly more restrained. There's a lot of chorus and it feels like we're in like a room, but it doesn't have that same kind of verb on it, like, you know, really long, like you're in a cave kind of stuff. That stuff for me when I'm listening to music keeps me like so intrigued, like, okay, why did they do this? And it makes me like really listen into the song and feel out all the different parts of the song. So now we're going to come from the second drop to the bridge, and this is like the biggest flip in the entire song.
All of my soul, up to the sky, stay inspired. Now's my time, all of my heart, all of my soul. Keep my head up.
Using the vocals in like a different context, changing how they are moving, little effects and stuff to help them like feel different in different parts of the song, I think is huge for me. I don't want to add so much, you know, effects to the vocals that you can't understand what the singer is saying. I want it to still be emotive and draw you in with the words, in addition to just the audio. I think that's a super important thing that I try to do here in the mix. So like we have the harmonies doing the oohs. There's like a vocoded version of that. Then this here. So we have that vocal synth going on there. Then I just have a few things to try to tame it, and also a delay as well. I love Valhalla delay. It can be super hard to control sometimes and super annoying with the automation in Ableton, but I love the sound of it, so it's worth it. And then yeah, just little stuff to help it move around, some EQ to clean it up, and transient master to help make it a little less sharp. So that is like the majority of the vocals. Now I do want to show you the very end of the group, because there's kind of an interesting thing that happens with the reverb and like a tremulator effect kind of thing.
All of my soul.
So the vocals kind of space out and degrade there, but I want to know what you think. Let me know if you have any comments on the vocals or any other element in particular. I'll show you the master bus real quick. So I'm going to mute the vocals just to get a feel of the kind of groove of the track. And here's the chorus. So this master bus is going to look a little weird. I had to do a few things to help fix mistakes that I made earlier in the session. So overall, I'm brightening the track up just a little bit. I tend to like mix a little too dark sometimes, so I end up finding that I have to brighten everything up on the back end. Then I'm using a couple utility plugins literally just to load into the glue compressor a bit more to help it move, because I love how that reacts to drums and helps the whole mix move. Then I'm just level matching it at the end there, so ignore all that. Doing a bit of soothe stuff to help clamp down on bright, like spiky things, and then just little EQ stuff to taste. Often I find myself pulling outside information in electronic mixes just to help it be a little less resonant, especially when you're using a lot of stereo stuff, a lot of reverbs that just like echo and just go forever in the sides of the mix. And then here is literally just brightening it more. Does it sound too bright? Let me know in the comments. And then we are clipping a little bit to help deal with the drum transients. And then here's decided to use ozone on this particular mix. And oh, look, I'm brightening it even more. And then I'm widening some things out using this clarity thing in a very subtle way. Same thing with that stabilizer, which is really, that's all just like soothe, basically. And then at the end of all of that, we have a very loud limiter. And here's what our limiter looks like. So yeah, I think it feels pretty hot, pretty controlled as well. That's pretty much everything in here. It was super fun to go through this and, dive back into a session after you haven't touched it in a few months and just kind of understand what were you doing, however long ago. So I hope you had fun checking this out. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you have any questions on this particular track or anything in general, hit me a comment down below, and feel free to get in touch with me if you have any interest in getting help with your music production. My name's Dan, and I appreciate you checking this out. Have a great day.